Good afternoon, Wellness Watchers. My name is Cassandra, and I am the founder as well as clinic director and one of the psychotherapists at One Piece Therapy. For those that are joining us for the first time, thank you. You are so very welcome. For those that have joined before and you're rejoining now, thank you. You are also very welcome. So within our webinars, we do like to engage. I love to engage. So if you are attending live, please feel free to either use the chat or unmute yourself whenever you feel like you want to share or answer a question, because I like to ask questions. However, those that are watching the recorded version, please feel free to use the comment section and we will comment and respond to your questions accordingly. Okay. I absolutely should have started and want to say happy Black History Month, Black Excellence Month, and also happy Love Week. I think there's a lot of things to celebrate individually, because, you know, I'm sure we're all know on a mass scale what's happening, but individually there's so much things to celebrate. So please do give space for that. As you see here, today I will be talking about embracing ourselves, in particular with self-care, self-love, and Black resilience. So this webinar is designed to not only educate, but also inspire and empower each of you to prioritize your well-being by celebrating strength and resilience of the Black identity through self-care and self-love practices. So let's get into it. So in today's session, we will explore the cultural and historical significance of self-care in Black communities. We'll also talk about the role of self-love plays in strengthening resilience, as well as throughout the webinar, I'll be giving practical strategies for nurturing our mental, emotional, and spiritual well-being. So again, big topics. Please engage with me. I'm also the one moderating, so there might be people popping in and popping out. Do feel free to speak. So before we dive in, I want everyone to take a deep breath, you know, including myself. Take a deep breath and ask yourself, how are you showing up for yourself, or how have you showed up for yourself this month, this week, and today? Yes, I think that's a good pause moment. Of course, those attending live, this is a way to show up for yourself. So thank you again. But, you know, before this webinar, after this webinar, there is still more up today. So I think it's a good thing to reflect on. Okay, so while you're possibly still thinking about that question, I'm going to fill your minds with more information. So about us, and that is including One Piece Therapy and myself. So services that we offer at the practice is currently psychotherapy and holistic nutritional health, and we offer it both in person and virtually. We support individuals ages 10 and older, couples, families, and groups across Canada. In particular, I support individuals 16 and older, and couples and groups as well. So concerns we support, because we are a team of practitioners, there's many concerns from chronic illness to, you know, anxiety, burnout, identity, neurodivergence, grief and loss, sleep concerns, sex concerns, so many different things that we do offer at our practice, which is why it's important for you to explore and find it for you. Okay. So, however, with my particular specialties, I do offer grief and loss support, emotional regulation, self-esteem, self-worth, identity, trauma, and concerns alike, including the modalities that I support is usually emotion-focused therapy, cultural awareness. I integrate mindfulness and spirituality. The modalities that I offer: emotion-focused therapy, cultural awareness, trauma-informed care, some spirituality as well, and strength-based. However, as a practice, we offer various modalities and approaches, including cognitive behavioral therapy, narrative therapy, which is also something I practice, solution-focused, and all the things. So again, please do feel free to engage in our website, because there's a lot to read there that will hopefully answer your questions. But also, feel free to ask questions here. So let's speak a bit more about brief Black history. Even though there's a lot about America, I have included that, but I think Canada and America, they play together simultaneously. I'm also curious, those that are attending live, where are you attending from? Just so I know how to cater my words. Please let me know where you're attending from. So a brief history, Maryland. Okay, so this is relevant to you. Definitely, I'll be talking about a bit of American history as well. So originally, Carter G. Woodson in 1926, he coined the second week of February Negro History Week. Also Maryland. Okay, well, thank you. Thank you, American supporters. Thank you for joining. So yes, so he coined Negro History Week, the second week of February, to coincide with the birthdays of Frederick Douglass, whose birthday is this Friday, and Abraham Lincoln, whose birthday is tomorrow. And they're both significant figures in Black liberation. And then in 1976, during the U.S. bicentennial era, President Gerald Ford, he officially recognized Black History Month. So this encouraged Americans to honor the contributions of Black people in shaping the nation. Today, Black History Month is observed in the U.S. and Canada in February, but in the UK, it's observed in October, ultimately celebrating Black culture, achievements, and resilience, which is why, as of late, a lot of people are now calling this month Black Excellence Month, which ultimately means celebration, right? So in particular, if this is the first time you're hearing about Black Excellence, it means it's the celebration of Black people achieving greatness in various fields. So despite historical and systemic barriers, it honors the resilience, innovation, and brilliance of Black individuals who have shaped history and continue to make an impact today, which the next slide will be getting into more examples of the impact of Black individuals. So Anderson Ruffin Abbott, from 1837 to 1913, he was known to be Canada's first Black doctor. So he was a physician, an inventor, and activist who contributed to advancements in medical treatment and served as a surgeon during the American Civil War. And of course, going more into health and wellness, because that is why I'm here. Dr. Henry Thomas, from 1866 to 1912. He was a pioneering Black Canadian doctor known for introducing innovative medical treatments in Ontario hospitals during the early 1900s. We also have Madam C.J. Walker, who became America's first self-made Black female millionaire. And this was around 1910 to 1919, even though her company was founded in 1906. But 1919 was the year that she became a millionaire. Also, we have Garrett Morgan in 1923, who created the traffic lights. And of course, that's revolutionizing road safety in many, many different places. Continuing with our lineage, we have Dr. Charles Drew in 1940. So he developed methods to store blood for transfusions, saving millions of lives. So again, another significant person in the health industry. We have Marie Van Britten Brown in 1966, created the first modern surveillance system. So safety, wellness, like I intentionally pulled out these brilliant individuals. Lisa, I hope I'm saying her last name right, Galopter. So she helped develop GIF animation technology, which of course plays a significant role in even how we communicate with people now. And this was actually in the late 1980s to early 1990s, right? She also worked with shockwave technology, which ultimately contributes to early web animations. Then we have more current day when it comes to, arts ultimately. So Serena Williams secured her 23rd Grand Slam singles title in January 2017. So the most decorated tennis player out there. And we have Simone Biles, who became the most decorated gymnast in history on October 8th, 2023, winning her 34th world and Olympic medal. So also surpassing previous records. So I quickly went through these big names, big accomplishments, but ultimately just honoring the significance of Black excellence, but also, especially towards the later bit, but as you can imagine, throughout history, there's also been personal, mental health challenges, whether they were televised or not. There is so much that we go through as Black individuals. So knowing how to take care of yourself, even if you're contributing, or especially if you're contributing in the health industry, is so important. So now moving into understanding self-care, self-love within the Black resilience, because we're great. We're really great. But there's a lot of things that we need to also learn. So let's get into it. Okay, so you're good. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so I'm curious if anyone can share the difference of self-care and self-love. I know it's used interchangeably, but I'm curious to hear if there is a difference or what the difference might be. So starting with self-care. So self-care, it's not just about, the spa days, the vacations, although those are great, absolutely needed at some point. It's about self-care is about the intentional acts we do to preserve our mental, emotional, and physical well-being. So another question to reflect on, or please do share, are what are some self-care practices that you use in your daily life? Feel free to share or reflect on it. But some examples of self-care when it comes to Black resilience is the civil rights movement. So activists during this time leaned on music, faith, community as forms of self-care to sustain themselves through the struggle and advocacy. Okay, a wellness watcher mentioned, let me turn on the chat, trying to get sufficient sleep and healthier eating. Yes. So catering to your physical health, which ultimately caters to your mental health, right? And also catering to your mental health contributes to your physical health. So that is absolutely something to continuously work on. Sleep and healthier eating as well. Okay, yes. Again, they play with each other, so it's so important to prioritize that. Thank you for sharing. We also have, when it comes to self-care, the Harlem Renaissance. So during this time, poetry, music, and again, art in general were not just expressions, but they were also healing. Today, we use therapy. mindfulness. We set boundaries as a form of self-care that strengthens our resilience. So even sleeping better, eating better, it would help make you feel better, maybe more optimistic, or there's maybe more strength to get through other things that you have going on in your life. Right? So self-love, right? I'm curious to ask what it is, but you know what? I'm just going to get into what it is. So self-love, it goes a bit deeper than self-care. It's the foundation. So it's how we speak to ourselves, how we value ourselves, and how we set boundaries to protect our peace, right? Still related to the examples of sleep and healthier eating, you still have to set boundaries. You still have to be mindful of what you put into yourself, because that is what you produce, right? Whether it's emotionally or behaviorally or even spiritually. So self-love example, when we talk to children, we tend to want to uplift them, tell them they're smart, they're beautiful, they're capable, but reflecting on if you do the same for yourselves, right? That is how you give yourself love, is how you handle yourself, how you communicate with yourself. So a question to reflect on is, if you wouldn't say it to a child, then don't say it to yourself. Okay? So if you're having issues with sleeping and you're like, telling a child, yeah, you can stay up till 2 a.m., like that's fine. You got to get up at 8, but stay, if that is not working for a child, you won't say it to a child, then don't say it to yourself. If you have goals, okay, you need to sleep by 11. So how can you support yourself to sleep at that time so you can wake up when you need to and feel refreshed, right? But that's also a vague example. That's assuming it's going to sleep. That's the issue. Sometimes it's staying asleep. That's the issue. So there's deeper conversations there. But in terms of reflecting on self-love, I do also want to give the reflective question of asking yourself, what is one self-love affirmation that you can commit to for this month, this week, and today? Feel free to share in the chat if you have self-love affirmations. Oh, yours is staying asleep. Okay, yeah, that is definitely something different that requires a lot of reflective practices. If there's any questions regarding it, please do ask. But I think as we go on, there might be other ways that will help you soothe into the rhythm of deeper sleep. An affirmation, you can only control me. Yes, I can only control me. That's a great affirmation to set boundaries, right? There's a song, I drink water and mind your business, right? I can only control me. I'm not going to deal with what else is going on. And especially now, that is very empowering because there's so much going on. I can only control me, right? I like that one. Some other examples is telling yourself you are worthy of, fill in the blank. You are worthy of rest, right? I know we'll talk a bit about it, but what rest and relaxation look like then, how it's spoken about now, it feels like, okay, but you can't rest. There's so much things to do, which can also make it challenging to stay asleep. When you have so much things in your mind, I have to do this, I have to do that, or that happened yesterday, I didn't even like that happened last week. Your mind is all over the place. So telling yourself you're worthy of rest, right? Also saying things like, my identity is my power and not my burden, right? Yes, in the chat. Yes, you're worthy of rest. I know sometimes I have another webinar that speaks about boundaries, not boundaries, sorry, about self-esteem and self-worth. So I give a lot of techniques on how to speak to yourself and what language to use when you're building your self-affirmations, because sometimes directly saying I am worthy of is not going to feel believable or achievable if that's not what you believe, right? So sometimes using different language, such as progressive or disclaimer language, it helps with these statements. But again, you can watch the webinar to find out more about it. And again, it's about self-care, self-esteem and self-worth. That's the webinar. But yes, the second point I've mentioned. And then the third example is I give myself permission to prioritize my joy. Okay. So these are definitely not exhaustive at all. And you can also create your own to make it more personable to what you are experiencing and what you need to tell yourself. I hope that difference is clear. Any questions? Feel free to ask. So now moving on to the historical roots of self-care in our communities. So I put up 6 examples, but I'll definitely verbally will share more. So firstly, when it comes to, we have wellness. I like the saying, self-care is not selfish. Yes. Yes, it's similar to a quote that I'll be reading on this slide, actually, by Audre Lorde, where it talks about how to understand self-care. And it's definitely not selfish because you always need yourself first, right? Even if you're a giver, which is okay. That's definitely, we need givers in this world, right? So even if you're a giver, you still need yourself to have something to give, right? The same saying of you can't pour from an empty cup. So, it's not selfish if you're trying to preserve yourself so you can be yourself ultimately. So thank you for sharing that. So again, some historical self-care practices, in the African ancestral wellness realm, they use a lot of holistic healing. So herbal medicine, spiritual rituals, and community care, as well as music in terms of drumming and dance. So these were therapeutic tools for emotional and spiritual balance. Self-care as a resistance occurred during slavery, where faith and spirituality were used, which in itself is a touchy subject. But again, as Black people, there was already a realm of spirituality versus religion. That is, religion and spirituality, separate things, very separate. During this time as well, there were secret gatherings, which were called hush harbors, which provided safe spaces for mental and emotional support. During the civil rights and Black Power movements, rest and joy was used as activism. So again, figures like Audre Lorde, he emphasized self-care as survival, right? And he has a quote that states, "Caring for myself is not self-indulgence, it is preservation," right? Self-preservation. And that is an act of political warfare. So absolutely taking care of yourself is a necessity. Also, the Black Panther Party in 1960s to the 70s, they established free breakfast programs, health clinics, and wellness initiatives. And the last category I've written is about modern day Black wellness movement. So of course, it's beautiful. I've been in the psychotherapy field or the mental health field for over 12 years. And it's beautiful to see the transition of how many people of color, in particular Black people, are accessing these services and really understanding mental health is health. I have to talk about things I'm going through, even if it's not, disorder related. People go through grief, people go through loss, people go through identity concerns, right? Career concerns. Like there's so much life situations that can impact your mental health. So now we talk about therapy and mental health more freely, even though there's still stigma. We still have our parents, we still have grandparents, we still even have people that are more current to the time, but they're not believing in it, right? But there's a lot more breaking and prioritizing of mental wellness, which is beautiful. There's also more Afrofuturism and healing art. So again, this is more about embracing cultural self-care through music, storytelling, and artistic expression. So talking about the importance of resilience in the Black identity, it's the heart. It's the heart of it, right? It shapes strength, survival, and it's the success of who we are, right? Even if we're not calling ourselves resilient, it's kind of like that saying, I think it's more of a now saying of we move, right? It's like, man, I don't feel good, but we move. Right? You keep wanting to just push forward with what you have to do to achieve your desired outcome. And that's not easy. And I think it's underestimated how much that is ingrained, which is why we're talking about it, like acknowledging that resilience, even in hard moments, there is still that hope that is embedded in us, right? So in the comment, and someone mentioned it helps me to cope and be able to be filled so I can pour out to others. Exactly. And that's the resilience, right? Even if maybe sometimes, depending on where you're at in your journey, some people use themselves as a means to an end, right? There's still that resilience of, okay, but I have to show up for this person. So what can I do to do that, right? You still have the ability to give, but definitely pour into yourself, to pour into others. So just talking about these points more directly. So the importance of resilience, the historical survival and strength, right? This is talking mainly about what some of our ancestors went through is slavery, segregation, systemic oppression, right? So through collective resilience, there was an overcoming, right? The civil rights movements and the Black Power era. So proving that resilience fuels progress, right? You feel empowered when you push through the adversaries. Number two, talking about, cultural and community support. So having faith, right? Whether it's to a religious body or not, it could be faith in the universe, right? Faith in yourself, right? But again, faith, family, community networks. I always say to clients at each stage of our development, it takes a community. It's not just in childhood, even though, again, that is a saying, it takes a village to raise a child. It takes a village to go through this life. Sorry, to go through a job interview, sometimes it could take a village, right? To go to school, it takes a village at each point. So having those pillars of resilience, also, again, music, art, storytelling is embedded in our history and how we speak with each other. So it's used for tools of healing and empowerment. We also, the importance also shows in the mental and emotional fortitude, right? So turning struggle into self-determination and pride, right? I do want to say that the struggle is not okay. It's not to be normalized at all. But somehow, when there has been struggle, we are able to turn it into feeling determined and being prideful. Like, yeah, I went through that, but here I am, right? Or I went through that, but it could be worse. So there's resilience in these speeches, also in these beliefs. Another point is overcoming generational trauma through self-care, self-love, and advocacy. And again, that's more of the millennial and after generation, I realize. Of course, before the millennials, let me not create any issues, but there's a lot more self-care and mental health that's being talked about. Okay, I need to break this cycle, right? But again, even before millennials, that generation, I don't know the generation, someone wants to help me, please. Please do help me. But overcoming generational trauma, breaking cycles, there's resilience in that. Like, things don't have to repeat. Baby boomers. Oh no, I think that's, Gen X. Okay. I think it's Gen X that's before millennials. Thank you for that. And lastly, we have innovation and excellence. So Black resilience fuels trailblazers in science, business, activism, arts, um, health, like all the fields, Black resilience fuels this, right? And again, the term in itself, Black excellence, is a testament to perseverance and talent. So there's a quote that I'd like to share. I saw it in a meme. I don't think that person created it, but I'm not sure who did. They said that we are our ancestors' wildest dreams. Right. So this is a reminder that resilience is honestly a legacy, and something to feel very proud of. Not that it might not be constant, because again, there's things we go through, but it's a resource that's embedded within us that we can reach for. Right. So moving into the intersection of self-care, self-love, and mental health. However, as you've been hearing throughout the whole webinar, the intersection is immediate. Like, it's hard to say, Black resilience without acknowledging the mental health and battles, overcoming triumphs, accomplishments that are concurrent with it. So you can imagine, without directly saying it's integrated, but let's talk more about it. So addressing mental health stigma in our community. So mental health, it's a huge part of this conversation ultimately. Again, I'm a registered psychotherapist, so that's my specialty. And many of us grow up in homes where we were told, to maybe pray about it, tough it out, go have a shower, drink some ginger ale. I'm Caribbean in the background as well. So ginger ale that's the herbal medicine. So while faith and resilience, there are strengths, definitely they are strengths, but they're not substitutes for mental wellness. Right? We need both. So I do want to ask everyone again, I'm curious to hear some mental health myths, false information that you've heard growing up. You want to share some myths? What did you hear that's like, oh, this is how you deal with your mental health? Men don't cry. Yes, that toxic statement, that's unfortunately embedded from childhood. Men don't cry. Therapies for white people. Yes, yes. And it literally pushed, like, it was internalized, like not even just hearing it, but it was internalized, like, okay, I can't go to therapy. Like, what's wrong with you? That's for white, like literally, that's for white people. I'm glad that is being, broken down bit by bit, definitely, because Black people, we have mental health. Right? It's strong, but we have mental health. Therapies for crazy people. Yes. There is that saying that even if you say, okay, you are going to therapy, you've already broken down. It's not just for white people. You're going to go to therapy, and maybe you share it with someone. Even still today, they'd be like, well, what's like, what disorder? They're thinking disorder, like, oh, you have bipolar, or you have schizophrenia. Like, what do you, like, that's serious, where the person might just be crying from a breakup. They've been with someone for 7 years. It's hard to let that go. You need support with that. So thank you for saying that. And thank you for the examples too. These are great. So you don't need therapy, you need God. Yeah. So again, that just, pray about it. Ask God for this, which is, again, those that are spiritual, absolutely. There is the element of, ask God, seek the guidance from the Most High, right? However, we need both. We need both. So let me just share some examples of what you might not have heard of. So as we already addressed, only crazy people need therapy. So actually, everyone has mental health, regardless of the background they're coming from. And we all experience a concern at some point, right? If it's not going to a professional for therapy, maybe you're going to a friend. right? And there's still therapeutic things that are being used in those deep conversations. But at some point, we all need support, right? One way or another. Another myth is people with mental health concerns are just weak or lazy. However, being weak or lazy does not cause mental health concerns, but sometimes it is a symptom, right? So when we're talking about depression, uh, by observation, some people might say, okay, you're just laying in bed, like, what are you, like, you know, you're acting weak or you're being lazy, where that is actually a symptom of something deeper going on emotionally. So it's not the same thing. So a myth, a roof over your head, food in the fridge, and money will fix it all, right? It's the survival. I already gave you dinner. Why are you crying? Right? But knowing that you are human and life is messy. So of course it's good. It's not even good. It's necessary to have these survival things checked off, right? You do need a roof over your head, food, you do need money. However, you can have all of that and still experience mental health concerns, right? Even bringing back the timeline of our Black excellent individuals. I know Simone Biles was more outspoken about her mental health. Serena Williams was as well, but Simone Biles in particular, she's coming to memory. I'm assuming she has a roof over her head, she has food in the fridge, she has money, but you are human. You know, there's still your mental health you deal with, and one does not eliminate the other, right? Also, another myth is I'm supposed to feel this way, right? So that is more like normalizing struggle, stress, discomfort, right? And although they are unfortunately common, they aren't normal, right? So no, you're not supposed to feel like you can't get out of bed, right? Or no, it's not good that you're waking up in the middle of the night and you're not feeling rested, right? The resilience, there's a fine line. There's a fine line here, because sometimes we could be resilient. So like, oh, I've been going through this for 10 years. Like, this is just what it is. You know, we move. But it's like, no, that you're not supposed to feel that way, right? Another example is, if I keep it to myself, I will feel better, right? So often, again, from a Caribbean household and background, there's sayings like, just keep it in the home. Like, don't tell nobody, no one needs to know your business, like what happens here stays here. But we need additional support, right? I think that's just a factual thing. And sometimes it has to be from somebody outside of yourself or outside of your family to help you. So there is that unbiased viewpoint, or at least an outlet, right? As I shared in previous slides, it takes a community to go through tough times, whether it's a point in your life or society. It takes more than one person to get through difficult times. Any questions? Any questions? This is great. Okay, thank you. Thank you. So I wanted to just close this slide by saying, imagine if we treated mental health the same way we treated physical health. So if you break a bone, you wouldn't just pray on it, right? You would go to the doctor, get it checked out, maybe even get surgery. And that's the same thing that we should apply to our minds and our hearts, right? Like, okay, my mind, I feel like I'm spiraling. I can't even sleep, right? Or I'm too clouded. I don't even pay attention to what I'm eating. I'm just eating whatever is in the fridge or whatever I see on, the roadside. But you don't want that, right? Especially if we're paying attention to our minds and our hearts. If we know we don't want something, we don't have to accept it, right? That's so important for me to say. Okay, so I have here the 5 benefits of prioritizing self-care and self-love. I think it goes without saying how much more benefits there are. And the fact that there are benefits, I think it goes without saying. But just to really hone in on those feeling like putting themselves on the back burner, or just become too used to feeling like that's your position. So one benefit is it strengthens mental and emotional well-being. So of course, prioritizing self-care, self-love, it reduces stress, anxiety, and burnout, and it boosts self-confidence and emotional resilience, right? And just pausing here, when we talk about burnout, a lot of people tend to recognize burnout when it's like the worst case scenario and you're considering taking a leave off work, right? The more we do engage in self-care and self-love practices, we can catch the signs of burnout quicker, so that it doesn't come to that exhaustive point where it's like, okay, now you have to take off work. Now maybe you're considering the financial aspect of it, like a lot of things, right? Pay attention to yourself before, so we can limit the consequences of not doing so. Number 2 is it enhances physical health, right? So it encourages better sleep, nutrition, and exercise. And it also lowers the risk of chronic illnesses that are linked to stress, such as like gastrointestinal issues or acid reflux or things like that, which our nutritionist does deal with. But, again, preventative things are usually better than the cure of things. And not to call out the people that were talking about better sleep and nutrition, definitely not to call y'all out, but thank you for giving the example, because I think it's a good checkpoint of, as we're talking about, those are goals you have, how are you taking care of yourself, right? What does your self-care and self-love practices look like? And hopefully with our conversation today, there is more opportunity to enhance those concerns. So number 3, so it empowers the Black identity and cultural pride. So this is what helps break generational cycles of trauma. It also reinforces self-worth and belonging. So regardless of what's happening societal-wise, you feel confident in yourself and how you show up. Number 4 is it strengthens relationships and community bonds. So it improves the ability to set boundaries, communicate your needs, and ultimately creates richer connections with family and support systems. Lastly, it fuels personal growth and success. So it increases your motivation and focus, right? If you believe in yourself, you take care of yourself, you have the capacity to literally do whatever you want to do, right? And it also encourages self-acceptance and purpose-driven living, which directly would help eliminate depression, which is what can come up when we're not taking care of ourselves. And all of these can also help limit a lot of mental health concerns because there is more of the belief into yourself, right? Okay, so although this is the last section, there has been many examples throughout the webinar that you are welcome to take away and expand on. But here I will be presenting on more to try out. So getting into daily practices. So of course, therapy and counseling, I've been mentioning this throughout, but it honestly is crucial if supporting yourself and others around you is very difficult, right? So therapy is self-care, whether it's traditional therapy or, again, talking to a mentor, joining a support group, seeking help is a strength, right? Journaling and reflection, so writing down thoughts helps release stress and gain clarity. So especially those that mention sleep concerns. So if you are if the issue is staying asleep and maybe there's so much going on in your mind, that would be a great time to journal and reflect to get it out of your mind, right? Setting boundaries as well. So saying no, I know people say, okay, it's just a 2-letter word, but it is a full sentence, right? It protects your energy. It helps you fill your cup. Boundaries are needed regardless. So that is one way. Just say no. Just say no. Also, rest and joy as a resistance. So in a world that tells us, we must continuously grind, rest is an act of resistance, and rest is also productive, right? I know a lot of people say, okay, I'm resting, I should be doing this, I should be doing that. Your mind is too busy thinking about what you should do. Knowing and reframing that when you are resting, it is productive, because now you're refueling to do all the things you have to do. I often do tell clients too, like, it's better that you choose when you can rest versus your body telling you when to, right? And I know we all experienced that before. Nodding your head. Thank you. Thank you, Wellness Watcher. Yeah, so, when we talk about, like, okay, I have this to do, I have this, like, I have so much things to do, and you're just going, knowing that you need rest, but you're still going, and then you get sick. Right. Sometimes that's like one of the worst. Like, usually you have sickness and it's like, okay, you have runny nose, but you can still function. It's when you don't prioritize resting and then that sickness comes, that's usually the worst one, because your body is tired of you. Like, it's tired of how you're handling it. So it's like, okay, I need to rest. And then unfortunately, you're forced to rest when you don't feel good, which is a whole other energy milking thing, because now your body has to fight to get better, and then once you're better, you need rest. So do choose intentionally when you are going to rest. Okay. A question that I do want to ask for you to reflect on, because I've been asking, what can you do for your self-care? What have you been doing for your self-care? But also, what is one way you can commit to prioritizing your self-care, self-love, mental wellness in general this month? So one way you can commit to doing it. Again, if you're answering,
I'll
yes.
answer. I was just saying that I have been putting some self-care things that I want to do actually in my planner. So it's like scheduled, and it's a constant reminder, because I'm constantly looking in my calendar at things I need to do that day.
Yes. Thank you for sharing. That is so important to keep yourself, like, not only organized, but accountable, right? When you're literally scheduling things, you're setting reminders for things. That's a great way to just keep yourself in check. Like, okay, it's time for lunch, right? Especially with most of us, or some of us, working from home partially, fully. Lunch hour it could be 10 a.m., it could be 8 p.m. Like, it's not the usual, 11 or 12. So being intentional, reminding yourself, okay, it's time to eat, it's time to do what you need to do. So thank you for that example. Someone else in the comment section also mentioned signing up with me. I am flattered. I'm definitely flattered. But yes, if not me, a therapist in general, right, will definitely keep you accountable, or a nutritionist, right? Any practitioner ultimately will definitely keep you accountable of taking care of you, right? So thank you for those examples. So here are two innovative ways to build self-compassion and nurture emotional health. So one is the mirror challenge that I like to give out to clients. So this is ultimately, as I mentioned, with self-love, how you talk to a child. It's speaking to yourself like you would a loved one, right? Or speaking to yourself like you would a child that you want to encourage. So creating either in a mirror or doing a before and after video, right? So you will start by saying all of your self-doubts, right? How you maybe currently talk to yourself. And then you would switch perspectives and talk to yourself more love and more encouragement. Right? And the statements that you say would directly respond to the self-doubts. So why this works, it rewires negative self-talk into self-compassion. So this is, a cognitive behavioral. therapy. We're reframing, redirecting thoughts, right? It also visually shows the transformation of self-love, right? So saying self-doubt, you're probably like you're just body language is speaking, tone is speaking, but speaking from self-love, there's more lightness, right? So please do try this. Or the other challenge-ish is embodying your inner child, right? So writing a letter to younger you. So I do always encourage, well, not always, depending on the client, I encourage them to write letters to themselves. And you can read it out in a video, you can read it out in a mirror. But it's important to include words of encouragement, healing, and forgiveness. Right? So this works because it creates a deep emotional connection, right? It also helps heal inner wounds and strengthen self-love, past and present. And lastly, I have here 3 ways to incorporate the cultural aspect into your self-care routines, if you're interested. So there's ancestral healing practices, right? Ultimately honoring traditional wellness. So using herbal remedies like shea butter, black seed oil, even oregano. There's different teas such as hibiscus, ginger. These provide natural healing depending on what is needed to be healed, of course, but there's definitely healing mechanisms in that. And we do have, again, our nutritionist will also help support you with accessing these different natural remedies for your concerns. Also practicing African and Caribbean wellness traditions, such as, I know the Yoruba, they have the Yoruba tribe, which is a Nigerian tribe. They have a spiritual cleansing, right? Or in Haiti, they have herbal baths, right? And generally embracing the African drumming, chanting, just the music nature, as it is a form of meditation and emotional release. Okay? So ultimately with the ancestral healing, it's going back to what our ancestors used to heal, which was nature, right? So just reconnecting with that wisdom. Another way, ultimately, I've already mentioned it, but music and movement as therapy. So healing through sound, healing through dance, whether you're creating your own self-care playlist, right? I've created, honestly, I could be a part-time DJ. Like, I'm convinced I could be a part-time DJ. I have different playlists depending on the mood that I need to pull from or run from, right? So creating your own playlist. Also engaging in cultural dance, right? Maybe it's stepping. I know the Haitian one is compa, right? So being joyful, healing, and of course the affirmations. Right? But yes, absolutely dancing your stress away, whether you have rhythm, whether you don't. I think it's always a good way to just move freely. And food as a love language, so nourishing the body and the soul. So cook your cultural foods, whatever that means for you. Maybe it's gumbo, maybe it's jollof rice, maybe it's oxtail, cook your cultural food, right? Or host a family or community meal where everyone's bringing their cultural food or sharing stories. And of course, at the end of it all, practice mindful eating. So appreciating the history behind traditional dishes, as well as being mindful for what you are putting into your body. Because some things can connect you or some things can disconnect you. Thank you. Thank you all for listening today. But before I completely wrap up, I do want to say, just as a reflection piece, the takeaways of being, self-care is a necessity. It's not a luxury. Also, self-love is about how you speak to yourself and how you value yourself. So the foundation of the relationship with yourself. And resilience is built when we prioritize our well-being. Okay. So thank you again for joining, whether you are live or watching the recorded version. I really do appreciate you for being up to date on your wellness, including in Black History Month, Black Excellence Month, Love Week, Love on Yourself. I do have here our address. As I did mention, we offer virtual and in-person support, and here's our contact information. So please do stay in touch if you want to talk about how to love on yourself a bit more, or connect with your identity a bit more. Please do reach out, as myself or other practitioners are more than happy to support you, including the nutritionists we have. Okay. Yes, the recording, I'm just answering questions. Thank you. The recording will be available on our YouTube channel, so please do subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's One Piece Therapy on all social media platforms. It is One Piece Therapy. So the recording will be there by the end of this week. Okay. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask as well. And if you don't, again, thank you for joining, and we'll see you in our next wellness talk.